Hi everyone, welcome to Cars with Ben, and in today's video I am going to talk about 5 cheap British alternatives you could buy as opposed to the traditional German or American or Japanese option. All of these cars are going to be under 6k, and if you've ever wanted a British car, this might be a good shout for you. So have a check out of these options because they're all cool or sporty cars. Let's go. If you are new here, before we get started, I just want to say don't forget to hit the subscribe button because I make weekly car content and I really enjoy doing it. So, without further ado, here's the first car. It's the Mini Cooper. Now, believe it or not, this car is actually under 6k and there's quite a few numbers of them. Now, before we get into the whole Mini Cooper thing, I just wanted to point out that there's so many different names. So technically, it could be the Austin Mini, the Rover Mini, the Austin 7, the Leyland Mini. There's so many different types, but really just want you to be focused on the fact it's a Mini. So there are several out there, and here you can see an option which is the Austin Mini. It was for $250 on Auto Trader, and I thought it was really good for the spec that it came in because it just looks so clean. Now these cars have been obviously around since 1959, well known in the Italian job, Mr. Bean, so many movies, and I just think it's a car that has to be included on the list because there are so many of them that you can get for less than 6k. Now a lot of the super prestigious ones, the original ones, yes, they'll be 20 to 25, maybe more. So obviously just make sure you do your research, but it's pretty awesome. Now everyone knows it's a dead small car and there's really nothing that would go wrong with a Mini. Is so good. Obviously occasionally they break down depending on which one you bought because it was the British Leyland era, but this particular one here in blue, I love the stripes. That's the sort of one I would go for because I like that original sort of Italian job look. And hey, it's a British icon, so you'll look really cool in it too. Up next is a slightly controversial choice, and it is the Jaguar XJS, a Jaguar that I feel is long forgotten and people genuinely do not know it existed, and that is because it is pretty old. It was produced from 1975 all the way to 1996, so a 21-year lifespan, and in that time they made 115,000, which is so many worldwide. Now, you obviously might know this car if you're a little bit older because it is a pretty popular car for its Jag time, but most people now wouldn't know it. Now, I think this, yes, it is a bit of a dodgy option, which I'll go on to talk about in a minute, but I found some at a very low price. The cheapest I found here was 5,900, which wasn't terrible, but that being said, it is a pretty unreliable car. Now, yes, you're getting luxury for it, as we can see here, and yes, it might not appeal to people in the UK, but if you're in America, you might like this option because it could be very cheap. And on top of that, you're also going to get a pretty cool luxury Jag. However, yes, there are a few problems with this XJS, and as it's probably one of the most unreliable, terribly built cars of its time. It just pretty much all of them died or just had issues with their manufacturing, or there was problems with its engine. They didn't last very long unless it was kept very well for its whole life. Even then, it had problems, and I think that's something that's got to be considered when you're looking at these XJSs. Now, even though they look pretty, do you want to live with that all the time? And I don't think you would want to, but still a good choice of British classic. You do get to look like a cool bad man in a Jaguar though, and that is ultimate British. Now, have you wanted a Range Rover and you've always wanted it as a dream car? Well, I think I've got a solution for you. It is the Mark III Range Rover. Now, yes, it is the production run of 2001 to 2012, known as the L322. And to be honest, it was probably one of the most, if not today, the most unreliable car of the time. However, that doesn't stop you wanting one, and I know it is a pretty cool car to own, especially if you've always wanted a British Range Rover. Just look really cool and just amazing, like a boss. Now, this car was produced for 10 years, so it did progress over that time, and you can get different versions. Here I found one for just under £3,000, which is incredibly cheap. Bear in mind, it probably will have a ton of problems, so you might want to up your budget to maybe 4 or 5, depending. But even then, it's a huge car for its money, and the maintenance is going to be a lot. Now, the L322 or the Mark III had the BMW or Jag engine, and they weren't too bad, but it was just, as you can see here, so much going on in the engine, and it was very expensive to fix if anything went wrong. In fact, some of the maintenance on these were typically really expensive, and a lot of the owners noted that it was actually more than the car after it came down to such a cheap price. Now, they made them in Solihull, England, as they still do now, and it's really been a popular car, and you still see a lot of them. So I don't think it's necessarily a badly, they're not written off the road completely. However, they still happen to be worse in the new Range Rover, so you may as well take a chance with this Range Rover. It's definitely something to consider, and I really do love a Range Rover because it just looks so cool and understated, and it is the equivalent of being British. At number 4 is the Ford Mondeo ST220, which is a British-made Ford for the UK, being the Mondeo brand. Now, this is a car that you definitely should consider because it is a really unique, sporty sort of sedan with four-door sedan. And the reason for this is it's an ST, but also they only made 2,000 of these, so it's actually pretty rare, making it sort of rarer than an Aston Martin, DB9, that sort of thing. And there's very little of them. You don't really see them. You're most likely to see them in blue. This comes in at just under £2,500, and if you want a slightly better one, you're probably looking at about £3,000 or £4,000. Now, I don't know if these are going to rise in value much, but there are very little of them, and they're very well known to be true driver enthusiast cars. They come with a 280 Newton meter torque engine with about 150 horsepower, and typically known issues with the Ford Mondeo ST was that because it was an ST, a lot of owners noted it was engine management issues, and that it was the big ST engine that caused sort of breakdowns occasionally, but usually pretty solid cars to run, as it was a Ford Mondeo and it just had a bit more oomph than the usual. I do absolutely love these because they definitely need to be considered as a true driver and enthusiast car. And with the Mondeo ST, you can also get it in the estate version, so it looks really awesome, and you can carry kids as well. So if you are a family man and you want a sporty car, this is definitely something to consider as a daily run around because they still look great today, even in that blue. And finally, everyone, it is the last car on this list for the British icons. It is the MG-ZT. Now, I've gone for the MG-ZT because it is a bit of a unique car, and it's actually sort of seen as a pretty awesome car for its time. Now, this came out from 2001 to 2005, was produced as an MG. Now, you might know it as a Rover 75 in the UK, and Rover have now gone out of business. And MG don't really make as many cars as they used to. They still do, actually. But for the most part, this was a sporty Rover 75, and it came with a 1.8 litre engine to 2 litres. And it was pretty powerful and considered quite a good driver's car in a way. They sort of facelifted it over time, and this one that came in at under £4,000, which I thought was fairly reasonable given the mileage, given it was only 30,000 miles. And that interior is really unique. It's just a really cool sports brand. It's almost like what M is to the BMW. Now, some known issues with the MG ZT were that even though it was pretty minor and drivable for the most part, there were just sort of airbag warning lights, engine hesitation, and rattle from the engine. But to be honest, that's expected from a V6, which is made by MG and being British at the time. A lot of known issues over those years when MG make those cars. However, I still think this is quite a sporty car, and you're not likely to see many of them at all. What's good, people? Hope you've enjoyed today's video on 5 cheap British cars you can buy under 6k. I really enjoyed making it, and if you enjoyed it too, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and let me know you've done so down below because I'm really enjoying making car content and the channel's also growing. So if you want to be part of me on this journey and see how it grows and see cool car content, don't forget to hit subscribe, and see you in the next one.